The Wyoming Holding Company double layer strategy. Is using a Wyoming holding company for owning your business or your investments a good strategy or a bad strategy? We'll get into that in this video. My name is Bobby Casey. I am the founder of businessanywhere.io. Our company does U.S. company formation and registered agent service in all 50 states plus the territories, virtual mailbox service. We do all your company compliance to keep your company legal. We help with bank account openings, bookkeeping, tax filings, basically everything you need to get your LLC up and running and compliant. So in this video, we're going to be discussing the Wyoming Holding Company strategy and should you use it and which situations it makes sense and where maybe it doesn't make sense. So what I'm talking about when I say a holding company is a holding company doesn't have an operating purpose. It only owns assets. So for example, let's say you are a real estate investor and you have 10 LLCs and each one of these LLCs owns a separate property. So in this scenario, you might want to put a holding company in place where that holding company owns each one of those 10 separate LLCs. So the benefits of that are each LLC as a disregarded entity, the income or loss flows up to the owner. If you individually are the owner and you own 10 LLCs, it can add a bit of complication to your personal tax return because when you file your tax return, you're going to have 10 separate sections, or let's say in this case for real estate, you'd have a Schedule E. So you'd have 10 separate properties or income streams on the Schedule E of your personal tax return in the US. And it could create a bit of complications. It's a lot more work to do that. It could cost you more money with your bookkeeper and your accountant to do the tax filing. Whereas if you had one LLC that was 100% member or owner of each one of these LLCs, then each one of the LLCs, the profit and loss flows up through to the one, and then on your tax filing, you only have that one holding company LLC on your personal tax return, and it can make things a bit simpler. Wyoming is also excellent for privacy, one of the best states, if not the best state in the US when it comes to privacy, because you do not have to disclose members or managers in public record with the Secretary of State, so making it practically impossible for anybody to find who owns your LLC. So let's say maybe you own multiple properties, you've got LLCs in the states where the properties are owned. Let's say you've got 5 properties in South Carolina and 5 properties in, let's say, Illinois, for example. I know that's a big range, but just for example. So you might have 5 South Carolina LLCs and then you might have 5 Illinois LLCs. Well, South Carolina is a state that you can also be private. However, Illinois is not. In Illinois, you need to disclose members or managers' names in the filing. If your holding company owns and manages each one of those 5 Illinois LLCs, you can actually list the holding company itself as the member or manager of that LLC, giving you a bit more privacy at the Illinois level related to those properties specifically. Other instances, you might want to use a holding company. Maybe you've got multiple businesses. Maybe you do e-commerce and you have 5 different Amazon e-commerce stores selling 5 different product categories, and they're all LLCs. They're all treated as a disregarded entity for tax purposes, so the income flows directly through to you. In the same situation, you might put a holding company in place to own each one of those LLCs to simplify things for taxes. Also, later on, let's say maybe you decide to sell one of those LLCs or sell the business. Maybe somebody wants to buy your e-commerce store, that particular Amazon store. You could sell, you have the choice, you can sell either the LLC, and then your holding company would be the one to actually sell the LLC instead of it being directly owned by you, or you sell the assets of the LLC, and in this case, let's call it LLC 1 sells the assets of the Amazon store, and it receives the funds, and then those funds flow up to the holding company. Situations where having a holding company may not make sense is if you have one operating business, and let's say you live in the state of California, and let's say you have a California LLC, and I don't know, let's say you're a plumber in California, you have an LLC in California, and you say, well, I really want privacy here, and I really don't want everything going into California, and you register a Wyoming holding company to own your California LLC. Well, that might present problems down the road because California is extremely strict. They're going to, at some point, catch you doing that, and they're going to require you to register that Wyoming Holding Company as a foreign business transacting in California, what's called a foreign qualification. And in that situation, you kind of lose the benefit, a lot of the benefit of having a holding company anyway. So California is very strict on that. If you own assets, if you're in California and you own, let's say you own rental properties in other states outside of California, but all of your income flows through an operating business. In a situation like that, you might would want to use a Wyoming holding company to own each of the LLCs that own the properties, but then register an LLC in California to handle all the property management and collecting rents and all that stuff, because then that LLC is going to be the one recognizing income. The other LLCs and the holding company would not actually have any income. Therefore, you would not need to register it as a foreign entity doing business in California. So there's a lot of different scenarios where it could make sense. I do believe holding companies make a lot of sense for simplifying your taxes if you own multiple businesses or multiple assets, and it does help tremendously with privacy. So I hope this information was helpful. If you need help registering your company, you can check us out at businessanywhere.io. We do your U.S. company formations, registered agent service, compliance, and pretty much everything when it comes to getting your business started and staying legal. Have a great day.